So over the course of the last 2 days, today and yesterday, we've had the Global Korea Forum, and I think that this is the very last session. So thank you very much for staying with us, and thank you once again for the Archdiocese Kim Hee-jung once again. So this session is titled Strengthening Civil Society Partnerships for Humanitarian Aid and Development in North Korea. So we will be discussing how to show a solidarity front to help out North Korea and their humanitarian issues. I'm sure you all know that the civil exchange or the people-to-people exchange has been severed since 2010 or 2011. During the President Moon Jae-in administration, for a very short time, the inter-Korea relations were more amicable, however, but the people-to-people exchanges were still very minimal. So over 15 years, any kind of developmental cooperation has been halted. So those who are interested in this session, especially the civil societies, are facing extremely challenging times. And I think that we've all reached our limit. It's a time of hope and for wishful thinking. Nevertheless, we still need to have hope for inter-Korea relations. And with President Lee Jae-myung taking office, he mentioned the normalization of inter-Korean relations, or the hope for it. Of course, I don't think that he's meaning any kind of simplified relations before, just like in the grassroots society, or sporadic development. But I think that it needs to be a more systematic approach. And with that, I would like to introduce to you 3 panelists. First, we have Mr. Cho Sung-chan, the research director of HANAS. So I will ask him to start with his presentation, and then whenever there is a new presenter, we will introduce them. So please keep to the 20 minutes of your presentation time. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Cho Sung-chan. I am Research Director of HANAS, Hananuri Academy of Northeast Asian Study. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just like the moderator said, civic organizations are struggling these days. And also, I'm one of these people who are actually facing some difficulties as a researcher myself. So I'd like to tell you about some of the thoughts that I've had throughout my research and activities. The title of my presentation is Exploring Cross-Border Urban Cooperation in East Asia based on SSE, Social and Solidarity Economy. As we do carry out different projects as a basis of research, we just cannot do them randomly, so we need to have a theoretical framework. And we do actually focus on SSE, and this is the term that is used at home and abroad. According to the policy planning report, presently there will be the making of a new bill based on social and solidarity economy. These are the milestones that I have treaded on at HANAS. It's like a storyline, which I have broken down into 4 seasons. Season number 1, it's about Rasan Self-Reliance Village projects, which we carried out. And season number 2 is about exploring and commercialization of East Asian transboundary cooperation models. And also season 3, I will talk about how there has been cancellation of the Rasan Village project. So if you were to renew the Rasan Special Zone, some of the directions we have would include response to climate change and also partnering with ODA. So I'll be talking about circular economy model. And then season 4, it goes back to North-South urban cooperation based on North Korean regional circular economy. So this is the exploratory process. I don't think you can read the little letters. We started off from 2009. We do call this project Rasan Independent Village Project, which started from 2009. And then, in order to facilitate the actual independence, we actually came up with the idea of microfinancing or a village treasury. So within ourselves, we actually got deeper into SSE. And through all these processes, we actually did model research and many others. We've gone through different steps along the way. And as I said earlier, we have had 4 different seasons in the process. The first season, Rasan Independent Village Project. The one I'd like to focus on the most is that we are registered in the Ministry of Unification, doing humanitarian projects, and also we belong to National Pension. Although we do humanitarian aid because we do support independence and self-reliance, we do work on regional village development as well. And humanitarian aid and development cooperation have encountered themselves, and in the process, the bridge in between was SSE that I mentioned, or social economy. Through that bridge, we made sure that there is an encounter of the 2 concepts, humanitarian aid and development cooperation. So as for the special zone of Rasan, maybe you see the picture. It's the red dot, which is actually near China, and also it's right below Tuman River. As we carry out the project, there have been some constraints and limitations. The northern part, they focus on self-reliance, and also they thought free aid was burdensome. We talked about humanitarian aid. In the north, they were rejecting the free aid, and there was market expansion back then in North Korea. To overcome these obstacles in our strategies, we actually combined humanitarian aid plus social economy to come up with a new model. And over time, this model got into the one where social economy model could contribute to local development as a catalyst. This is important because through social economy, as we go through that concept, maybe it doesn't tarnish the self-esteem or the pride of North Korea. It's not just giving 100% unilaterally, but then we do not actually stimulate any of their ideology. So maybe a cooperative is idea for social economy or SSE, and after the regime was established in North Korea, cooperatives played very big role in their transition to social economy, and also in some local regions, cooperatives actually play very important roles there. So this is something that has already existed in North Korea, not something already from South Korea. We had to combine it with humanitarian aid. So there is no stoking of northern self-esteem or ideology. But then this actually played a very big role in Cuba and still now. And also, SSE actually is playing very important roles in terms of the lifestyles or livelihood of the residents. As we carried out this village project, I actually called it Village Y, but we broke down into 3 stages. So in a decade, we make sure that they become self-reliant, and Hanas wants to help out. And it is based on the cooperation and consolidation with the village. Although we give the proposals, but then they would give us their feedback. And we were developing all these things until the second phase, but it got halted because of COVID. The gist of the idea is like this. I said Treasury Bank or Village Bank. So it's not where we just give all the goods to North Korea. Yes, we do support, but 100% of the value is redeemed. There is no interest there, but still it's redeemable in the scheme. And this is actually something in benchmarking Swedish Yak Bank model. So we wanted to help out a North Korean village. Although it's a loan scheme. One is business funding, the other, the resident livelihood loan. So we carried out these schemes, and we have come up with some achievements. This is the agreement that we signed with the North. And we have actually done quite significant activities. As for a tractor like this, it was something that we just gave out through humanitarian aid, but this time, let's say the cost of this is 1 million. Korean won is not just giving away, they actually are paying it back over a decade, so they do repay the price. So we don't have to go there frequently. And the North, if they have strong desire for self-reliance, they will repay, paying off the price to get closer to self-reliance. In the process, so there was this People's Committee of Rasan that played a very big role. I think I've spent already 2 months' time. We got the performance report from the North, and we also like to show you that agriculture output has increased. And this one is something we have, repayment plans that we and the village have. So in 18 and 19, we actually got the cash back. Maybe you would not believe me, so I'm going to show you actual money that we received from them. Although this is in yuan, but still there was this redemption of the investments. One little evidence. So having done phase 1, there have been some surprises. Let me show you the picture right away. The North actually had this drawing and sent to us. In phase 2, we talked about food processing plant, and it is actually in line with the strategy of the central government. So for self-reliance of the village, such food processing plant is needed. We proposed it, and they actually came up with this drawing, and also they sent us all the things that they needed, like supplies, equipment, and so forth. We had internal discussions, and we realized, yes, we need to support. So through the funding in the South, we actually moved on to the second phase, and you can see the actual results. This is as of 2019. Inside, there are also machinery to process agricultural output, so their livelihood will get better by selling these products off to the market. And also these machines not used here alone, but then this can be used and shared among different villages nearby. And as I said earlier, we actually had COVID, so there was suspension of the village project. It was official halt though, but unofficially, I would say that maybe it's a hopeful note that is going on. We don't have to monitor it though, but it's an ongoing project. I assume that it's still going quite well, but it needs to be confirmed though. Anyway, we have gone through the cancellation in the middle of it, and we realized there are limitations to our approach. We were thinking, how can we sustain this project or other project like this? So for Rasan project, so Tumun River is area shared by 3 countries. So we were thinking maybe we can take advantage or fully utilize diaspora from Korea. So we're thinking, we actually looked into some transboundary urban cooperation. One example is Basel, Switzerland. If you have used Basel Airport, if you travel, it's a Swiss airport, but it's located on the territory of France. So these 3 countries have very close cooperation. So we thought that this is very similar with Hunchun, a Chinese city. So we actually have looked into the case in Basel, and then there have been 60,000 Germans and French that commute to Basel daily. And also in Basel, there is regional management governance called TEB. They have formed this transboundary space, and also SEB, which is a network for solidarity economy. So they have these networks to operate them, and they have their own currency. So these cases we thought were very significant. Take a look at the map. The gray actually is the one where there is like joint development of different countries like France and Germany, and their infrastructure is interconnected. Not only the lower stream of the Tuman River, Gangwon Province, and Wonju, and many others that are adjacent. Maybe you can think of further expansion of the infrastructure. And just below the national boundary, there are buildings located on the right side, which we cannot imagine. But in Europe, there have been different transboundary cooperation projects, and also there is TEB to go beyond borders, and social economic networks play very important roles. So these are the facts that I've been confirmed with. And this is a company called Migros. And we could check this out in Basel, a retail cooperative company. And we thought maybe we should seek for transboundary cooperation in the Tuman River Basin. So in VNR report of North Korea, transboundary cooperation and some of the keywords like that have been included. Maybe this is something North Korea would support as a strategy. And also, SSE could be one strategic action to achieve SDG, which was officially announced by the UN. Historically speaking, so Anjungun's Oriental Peace Theory, this can be a thought we can actually be based on. If you take a look at the theory, there are lots of important points, and there is the establishment of Oriental Peace Association, an economic community, so banks can be established so that the currency can be shared, which is the case of Basel. Based on Oriental Peace theory of Anjungun, maybe we can develop our model further. And I thought about all these entities that can participate. So maybe we can think about how to group them or form a network with them. So these might be the model for transboundary cooperation in the Tuman River Basin. This is one of the research results. So I am giving you some of the results. And these are the books talking about these topics. For further details, maybe you can refer to these two books. And also, what's also important is that because I actually do work at HANAS, actually has to be connected with projects, having done the research. Since last year, we have conducted SSE Entrepreneurship School. So along with these people from North Korea, also we talked about how to make new projects. And also, we are going to have a conference coming up in November. We're going to have more of the milestones under the theme. This is season 3. I've slightly touched upon it before. The self-reliant village project of Rasan hopefully can be explored further by the time we have more opportunities to network. So I was thinking what to do about the project. But the scale of the project is rather small. Maybe we can scale it up so that maybe we can do more larger scale project with Rasan Citizen Committee. Maybe it can be hopefully in the model of a local circular economy. I've done the research on it as a researcher. And as I do the research, some of the keywords actually would include the climate crisis. So we actually are sitting on the peninsula. So we need to take action, especially regarding the sea near us. And also, circular economy is globally focused as well. And North Korea talks about circular economy as well. And there are some pilot projects which are actually going by the Green Protocol. And also, North Korea enacts a Municipal and Military Development Act emphasizing circular economy, and also they do 20 by 10 policy as well. And through all these approaches, we can look for new opportunities for urban development. And I put that into a diagram. If you take a look at it on the left side, outside the box, it is about international community support. The green ODA can be used here from the outside, and also internal resources of North Korea can be combined with it to strengthen self-reliance of North Korea. We have come up with the idea of having a local circular economy model in Rasan. All these actually have been submitted through the paper, so maybe you can refer to my paper and the books to see the details. Lastly, it is season 4. It is about putting that into a project. Going back to the original point of discussion, North-South urban cooperation, maybe you can go approach this topic through transboundary topic. But then we've had lots of projects with Goyang, Gwangju, Ansan, Wonju cities. And also, as for this act of North Korea, you can see all the details for the Military Development Act of North Korea. NGOs, civic society, and private entities of South Korea. This actually is a list of all the items that North Korea is needing at this point, which actually can be catered to by the South Korean entities, either public or private. If we propose any of the ideas to do with the items here, maybe they will say yes to it. And especially 20 by 10 policy for local development in North Korea has been generating results since last year, but there are limitations to do it on their own in terms of financing and infrastructure. That's why inter-Korean cooperation is essential. So these are the areas that have been picked. So there can be sisterhood relationship formed by a South Korean city versus a North Korean city. One more minute for me, please. This is my last slide. I mentioned urban cooperation between the two Koreas. As I wrote down my report, I have figured out certain points. There are 10 cities on the border of the two Koreas. They have come up with some ideas. DMZ Special Confederation, which has not actually passed the assembly yet, but then maybe it can be a very important framework for the two cooperation. As a researcher myself, I cannot give a rather rationale proposal because that would have to imply unification. But I can still propose is that I think the bloodline between the two must be carried on. President Lee actually said that social support is needed for the area in between. The reason why it's not fully developed is because of the blockage. We need to make sure that all the bloodline and love actually should be well carried on between the two. Thank you so much for your presentation. I wish that we had more time, but I'm sorry I couldn't give you more time.
Next, we would like to invite Ms. Lee Ye-jung, Director of Programs of the Korean Sharing Movement. Thank you very much for the opportunity. So Dr. Cho Sung-chan also mentioned that if our North and South Korea restarted their relations, what can we do? So I think that in order for the doors to open, I think that my presentation will focus on what we need to do until that phase. So if I had the answers, I probably would not be here and I would be somewhere else, but I would like to discuss or present some of the things that I had been thinking about alongside my colleagues. So next year, it means it's the 30th anniversary of civil society's exchange with North Korea. So I think that we need to recap what are the wins and losses. And then second, also the environment of inter-Korea cooperation in the civil society, whether it's meaningful or significant, and whether or not North Korea truly relies on any external sources or not. And then some of what we want to pursue and what we can do. So I'm sure that you all know very well that in 1995, North Korea requested humanitarian aid for their civil society, and so that's why it started. In 1996, there was a nationwide movement to support our North Korean residents because there was a consensus that North Korea was a part of us. So there were a lot of civil society organizations that were formed then. At the time, it was more of a temporary support and humanitarian aid support with food support. But then afterwards, there was a North-South summit, and afterwards, it was cooperatives and hospitals looking into not maybe the ODA, but maybe a development cooperation. So it was maybe at most 10 years with the heyday. And then in 2008, with the Kumgang Mountain incident, and then afterwards there were a series of different incidents, unfortunate incidents, like Mr. Lee also mentioned, but the tides turned then. And I think that the current situation is just an elongation of it. And then there were maybe in 2018 slight hopes for a better future, but then again it was halted in 2019. Nevertheless, I think that there were some wins from civil society, because it was supportive in providing humanitarian aid. And I mean, if you think about it, it wasn't that much. If you think about our ODA amounts, then it wasn't that much. There was a lot of criticism saying that we're giving away too much to North Korea. However, if you look at the absolute amount, it wasn't that much. Nevertheless, civil societies wanted to focus more on the vulnerable groups. And whatever we did send, we actually went over to North Korea and monitored, and I think that it was really helpful on the ground. And with these projects, we always had knowledge transfers and tech transfers. This was an important aspect, so that they can stand on their own 2 feet, that they could get an idea of how they can utilize it to better their lives. However, the biggest significance, I think, is the fact that for 50 years, a lot of the residents in North Korea and South Korea thought that each other were enemies. However, by doing this kind of project, we felt that we were the same race, the same ethnicity, and the same people. So I think that that was a win for us. Another aspect, it was only the government that had any kind of say in any activities. But after these incidents or accidents, civil society did play a strong role. However, there was also limitations. Nevertheless, however we try, there were limits because we needed the sign off and the green light from the government on both sides. So if both sides were in conflict with each other, then the civil society also wavered. And I think that it was a fluctuation of up and down. Unless the legislation or institutions, institutionally there are changes, then we can't really show any power. At the moment, we're in good odds with the Ministry of Unification. However, if the tides turn, then you don't know what's going to happen. And for 50 years, we were enemies. And then we also had exchanges and cooperation for 10 years. So if you think about it, it was too short of a time in order to overcome the perceptions that we were enemies. So in order to truly seek out true change and transformation, it was too short. So, and I think that in the 2000s, we did a lot of activities in the North, and we weren't so interested in inclusive and comprehensive policies because we were just focused on the ground. That's why it was more focused on how to seek consensus among the public. So it was more of a one-off event. That's why problems that had occurred during that time always repeat itself. So with a new chapter in inter-Korean relations, we still have to reflect on the past and also think about what we need to improve. But then we always have hope that maybe if the two governments are better on better sides with each other, then we might actually be able to find more opportunities. Okay, then let's look at the current status and environment of the inter-Korean cooperation. I'm sure that the people who are majoring in politics will know better. However, North Korea had declared the hostile two states comment. But we don't know if this is a long-term or short-term strategy or if it's a definitive decision. But for the time being, their stance towards South Korea is very hostile, and they don't want to have anything in relation to us. So the second is there's a holistic sanctions on the North, but it's actually on a different level of before. Before there were, of course, sanctions, but it wasn't to this extent. So we kind of think whether we think that we can actually pursue projects. Of course, there are waivers. However, they are in place. However, there's a lot of administrative issues involved, and nothing gets passed through and nothing gets confirmed. It's not just our organization, but whether it's the government-to-government businesses or projects, it's still stalling. And the international society has also changed. North Korea is also being more friendly to Russia. I'm sure that you know very well about that. But if you look at the Korean Peninsula issues, it's become a given in the international society, as well as the sanctions and the hostility towards North Korea. If you think about us traveling over to the international society, I don't know how we're going to bring that level of interest up, because it's been so long that this has been protracted that no one is so interested anymore. I don't know how President Trump will respond, but we'll have to see. As for Europe, it's a little bit different because they are supportive of the engagement. However, with the Russia-Ukraine war, every focus is focused on there. And then with North Korea sending their military troops to Russia, then it's an ongoing battle of being hesitant. So I think that that is what is left to us. I think the Korean society's change in perceptions, I think I don't need to mention that again. It's not just about, the whole government. It's only maybe just a handful of researchers, a handful of NGOs, and maybe a snippet of the government. So at the moment, with the new oncoming government, there's also changes in the pro-North policies. However, there's not much of a difference from before. Even if we do have a defrosting of the ties, will it be enough to completely overturn the relations? And I don't have that much time, so I will just skip over. I do still believe that it's meaningful and significant to try to develop and cooperate with North Korea. In terms of trust as well, we talk about building trust, but if we're not going to meet each other, do you think that we can build trust just with text and paper? I don't think so. And then we have to think about whether North Korea has any willingness to cooperate with external sources. So actually, all the UN forces exited North Korea since COVID, and they haven't been able to go back in. So if you think about the UN office in Pyongyang, they are working off of Thailand. So their permanent office is still unable to go back into Pyongyang. Of course, the UNFAO is still providing some tech support, but there's no permanent office opened back in Pyongyang. And as for the embassies, I mean, maybe it's a little bit of a different situation. Switzerland, Sweden, they're opening up, but nevertheless, they're still very slow compared to what we had expected. So they are very much complacent about the humanitarian aid organizations, but as for diplomacy and others, they are more open. And in 2021, through the VNR, I think North Korea mentioned and showcased their willingness for international cooperation. But then afterwards, there was such hostility and difficult challenges afterwards, so I think they're still waiting. However, unfortunately, North Koreans' time clock is working at a very, very slow pace compared to us. And then moving on, I think that this is probably some of my final slides. So as a civil society organizations, what do we have to do? I think we do need to overcome our boundaries and try to find contact with them. We have to look back into the past and the contact points and then go beyond those points and to find new areas of contact. There were a lot of pro-South organizations that were dismantled, but there are still certain points of access. So we do need to continue our efforts in finding that contact point and expanding it. Also, international organizations and international civil societies also are trying their worth in order to get into access into North Korea. And there was a SDG conference in Beijing in 2023. And so we tried to grasp at least a small understanding of what North Koreans are thinking about during that time. And second is to teeter the lines between humanitarian development and economic cooperation. a lot of things that they wanted from North Korea, they wanted to find projects that are a win-win for both countries, not just one-sided aid. So there were these trials in the past as well. And if you think about the right-hand side, they're actually peeling garlic. So that factory actually has become a cooperation for economy. But if a lot of the support was provided there, and then we sent over garlic over to the factory, and then they would actually peel and send it back to Korea. I think that there are these kinds of opportunities in which we can cooperate on a business level with North Korea. I think that it could be public and private, domestic and overseas all together. If you think about public and private, it was a huge volatility point for 30 years. There were so many fluctuations. And every time the administration has a new line, then they actually change their policies. So I think that historically, all presidents and all administrations were in consensus with providing humanitarian aid. I think that we should hinge on that and make it more of a systematic support measure. And of course, international cooperation is, a must, because we can't think of anything without international cooperation these days. So I think that even all the civil societies that had been in that process, we also need to find common ground with Inter-Korea as well as maybe a third-party country. There's a lot of capability and resources that are needed. However, there's a lot of people who say that this is maybe the way to go forward. I recently went to Cambodia, and I actually had a thought, maybe why can't this be done? I think that there could be a way. And I think that North Korea also has their own set of needs, so we need to find what those needs are and start from there. This is my last slide. I think now we really need to go beyond just exchange and cooperation and peaceful movements, because a lot of those NGOs actually said we need to shy away from discussions like this, because then that's how we remain neutral. I think that this has to be mutually beneficial to each other, whether it's exchange and cooperation or a peace movements. So in order to create peace through these cooperation, I think that it's vice versa now. Also exchange through peace in order to achieve more exchanges and cooperation. I'm very on time, so I think, looking back, when we had active relations and exchanges with the North and South, I think that a lot of things that we needed to think about was really about persuading the North. The rest was okay, and the rest followed suit. However, now it's a different story. It's a much more complicated and intricate problem. We need to be much more strategic and have a long-term outlook, and have plans in order to move beyond those things. So that's why we have to persuade the civil society in the North, the government, and the international society as well. We actually have to persuade them, no, that's not right. We have to meet them first and see their needs. And as I mentioned before, I think that the boundaries between peace movement and exchange and cooperation should be crumbled down. So it's not just about the opinions of our civil society, but I think that it also should be on the minds of the researchers. I think we should collaborate more in order to overcome such challenges. Thank you very much.
오랫동안 그 활동해
Thank you very much, Ms. Yi, because I think that she has put on a lot of thought after having worked in this field for so long. Next.
최연아
I'm going to invite the next panelist, Ms. Choi Yeona, Senior Researcher from Hans Seidel Foundation, Korea. Hello, I am Choi Yeona from Hans Seidel Foundation. The two panelists have given you very clear ideas on the topic, so maybe my presentation will be an extension of that. It's a German institute that I work for, so unlike others, we are headquartered in München in Germany. So let me give you some of the international activities that we do as a civic organization. In the previous session, there have been two September 19th agreements, but then I actually will revisit the one 7 years ago. There was cooperation, reforestation, and that's something we might revisit. So in thinking about some crises for the Korean Peninsula where our natural resources are connected, we can think about that agreement. My topic might be rather specific because it's dealing with agriculture and forestry. I'll touch upon it as a practitioner and researcher to share my ideas and thoughts. As you know, this topic, agriculture and forestry, is just one example where we can go beyond boundaries. It can be inclusive of ecological issues and peace, coexistence as well. And at the end of the day, it might be to do with our life. So maybe it can give you some thoughts. Previously, Ms. Lee Ye-jung actually talked about the 30th anniversary of the people-to-people private level cooperation. I think I am a part of that very long journey. And now I've become a senior researcher, no longer a junior. And I do believe that many of people who are involved in the inter-Korean cooperation, who have been doing research in the field. Now I look at you in the audience, and many of you are seniors. I think two people look like they're juniors, but still, maybe the junior researchers or people from the audience, maybe you can think about what you can do later in your career, and not just about the North Korean defectors or diaspora. Maybe not just the research that we do within ourselves. Maybe you can think about a broader sense of dealing with peace and coexistence on the Korean Peninsula. And yesterday, we heard some steps for coexistence. Maybe you might remember. Currently, we are in the very minimal coexistence where we actually cannot go beyond the indirect cooperation. Still, peace and coexistence are the topic we have been talking about since yesterday, and we'll talk about those topics later on as well. Things are tough right now, but in the inter-Korean cooperation, hopefully we might have a new breakthrough, so we need to get prepared. And preparation doesn't mean we just talk about it. We need to think about directions forward for tangible, feasible cooperation. On this note, we've listened to the Rasan Cooperative Project of Hanas, and also the People's Forest delivered by the previous speaker. I think all these ideas actually would include coexistence cooperation. And we don't only talk about the nations. We do think actually about the international community. As a member of the international community, we do actually think that there have been many results that are worthy to be praised. But something has always happened. To do something, COVID was one example. So we need to recall this incident, because after COVID, cooperation channels have in fact blocked. Even against backdrop, there might be some opportunities and potentials to turn around. Internally in North Korea, there have been some changes. I told you that I'll touch upon agriculture and forestry, but entirely speaking, regarding EVNR, there's been mentioning of SDG, but North Korea on their own seems to do some very active actions regarding SDG or environmental protection. And also in North Korea, there is lots of focus on food security, but also environmental protection and ecological activities they're very passionate about, enthusiastic about. 2011, 21, there has been revision of the Environmental Act, and the provisions on protection of the endangered species have been highlighted a lot. And regarding the Ecological Research Institute from 19 to this year, Asia bird study has been carried out and has been also announced by International Institute as national resource. So as the COVID hit the nation, and although we don't have the cooperation channels were underway, still it seems like North Korean regime is having ties with the international community on these aspects. And I think thinking about the recent period, maybe before and after COVID, before the pandemic, despite the tough situation, especially 2015, even during the period, I mean, when mentioned Cambodia, Vietnam, and Mongolia, where experts from the two Koreas participated in international cooperation project, including forestry and agriculture. So knowledge exchanges have been carried on since then. And after 2010 and after 2019, after COVID, things are tough as well. But there have been online, non-face-to-face meetings have been steadily underway. As for my foundation, Hans Seidel Foundation, we talked about climate crisis, green growth, and management of the water resources, and regarding reclamation of the issues in Africa. We have done all these online encounters maybe twice or three times a year since 21. Maybe if you're interested, you can actually ask more. We do actually exchange ideas with the government entities and counterparties. So non-face-to-face cooperation is not easy because vis-a-vis face-to-face, things are tough. But when we cannot do direct cooperation, maybe you can think about non-face-to-face cooperation ideas. As you're well aware, so we as a mediator can play some roles. We can work with civic society and government. MCC and Mennonite is central committee, which also can be an engaging body, and there are many UN bodies. Even within UN agencies, they are active in environment or healthcare. So cooperation with international bodies can be underway to come up with a new platform. A platform of exchange of ideas is also very meaningful. I don't know the exact year, but maybe it was 2002 or 2003. There has been maritime cooperation of East Asia. There was engagement of North Korea, South Korea, and GBCR representative was there to have online, non-face-to-face meeting. And in the perspective of Northeast Asia, North Korea even actually did the signing for the cooperation. So we can tell that North Korea is not always closed. And also on the Korean Peninsula, the long-term cooperation actually is not requiring a short-term solution. Maybe it should be something steady and mutually beneficiary. I think just like two speakers have talked about, we need to consider institutional, social, and economic awareness actually needs to be brought up. We talk about development cooperation today, but to do it, to make it possible, we need to have all the other corresponding efforts in different areas. And these must be well done in a stable way and meaningful way. To make it possible, all of us need to extend our efforts. So to make it into policy making, there are some key points. When you think of development cooperation, many would think that we actually are to make investment. It's not always true. And also, one more thing, it could be about not just looking at North Korean labor as economic means. It could be a part of the mutual economic cooperation. It's something I'd like to emphasize. And also, there are lots of short-term projects, not only what we do, but what I think is most important is projects that are regular. So actually, I started my career as a senior researcher, but now I'm senior. In 2021, we have a similar session, maybe in a different venue, maybe in GFK. And also, I now am no longer nervous as a senior researcher. talking about what we do regarding development cooperation at the foundation. Maybe we can talk about the projects that are more long-term. I know things are tough, but we can think of more long-standing projects, thinking about policy priorities and diplomatic capacities in making our approach. GKF is a forum that has been carried on since 2010. The topics would vary over time, but since then, for about 15 years, has been steadily held. And I think TREC 0.5 actually has been well carried out. There might be some pros and cons of different ideas shared, but then we can have multifaceted approach so that we can really show our middle player stance. In track number 2, there are also official channels as well. And next week, there will be UN meeting where the roles of the President Lee actually can be shared. And also, there could be the roles of APAC to be played, which will be held in October as well. But then, also use diplomatic channels on the way. One last note I'd like to make is that people-to-people network must be renewed. So along with Mr. Cho and Lee, I'm here with you, but there have been lots of people who have been here but no longer active. But this is the case at home and abroad. And some of the foundations, UPS, for example, and all the representatives there actually might not always work there for long. So people-to-people network is very important. In order to do work, we need to do it together. Network is needed. So networking is something I'd like to highlight. And also, we've been talking about this topic again and again. We might need to revisit the cooperation nature of the two Koreas, through which we need to restore our trust that's forgone right now. So maybe there are some commonalities we can do as member states of UN. So for the areas we can do work together and for the areas we can do separately, we need to think about the division into two categories. In this aspect, I'd like to propose a phase-by-phase strategy. The first one is indirect cooperation. We can prioritize food security in partnership with international organizations like us, supporting projects such as modern greenhouse construction and soil improvement initiatives to safeguard the improving living conditions of North Koreans directly. This actually can be costly, but it can be very small. The scale might differ, but I think it can be about 60 million Korean won for 3 years, based on our experience. So regarding the project size, it can depend on the policies of different institutes and agencies. By going beyond indirect cooperation, we might have expanded cooperation where there's strengthening of self-reliance by expanding agriculture and forestry infrastructure, just like HANAS did. Cooperative can be established to boost self-reliance of a village in North Korea. In 2004 and onwards, North Korea has come up with 20 by 10 policy, which is very much in line with this idea. It's a 10-year plan for local development. There's going to be lots of changes in the next 5 years. Regarding reforestation project, it has been carried on for the past decade. Since 2015, a lot of results have come about. So, as a foundation, as a middleman, I would see that there have been lots of achievements regarding reforestation. So maybe you can also think about construction, and it's something that they can do well. Implementation and operation, maybe cooperation is needed, especially to do with all the power supply and stuff like that. So cooperation and discussions are needed. The last stage is phase 3, which is full-scale cooperation. I know a lot of institutes are already ready, like smart agricultural cities and smart cities and water-related and joint infrastructure establishment. I think that the scale-up is pretty much possible in phase 3. This is something done through community cooperation. Regarding the timing of each different phase, we need to have more discussions. It can be maybe next 30 years. For phase 1 or next 10 years. For phase 3, we don't know. Maybe we need to talk together about that. And maybe we can talk about it also in our small discussion later on. And also improving living conditions of North Koreans. It can be a stepping stone or a very first step forward so that we can achieve the end goal where we might be able to having a unified the community of the two Koreas. And thinking about our roles as civic organizations, I think solidarity among us is very important. As I said earlier, if there's any haltage or stoppage of the government-to-government relations, NGOs and social groups and civic society have all helped out without any suspension. And it's important what we do, actually, and something we have done so far. In restoring trust among the two Koreas, there are middle players and I think facilitating institutes which have done cooperation projects. And also, there have been also our people cooperative, or there have been Kangi projects as well. I know that contracts are being renewed, which I think is a very big hope. I know the hope cannot always be achieved into results, but still, there are lots of hopeful signs where stepping stones have been well paved. And for a foundation like us, Hansa Seidel, I think that civic society and international society can work together, and also we can play intermediate roles as facilitators, whereby the rhythms for cooperation can be well underway steadily. And one last note I'd like to tell you is that, hopefully there is not much volatility driven by the external situations, and hopefully I think that there is the power of networking among different civic groups and foundations like us. And it can be in the form of information change or knowledge sharing or sharing of experiences to plan on future projects. One thing I'd like to mention is that cooperation with the North is not just giving rice today, it's to prepare for tomorrow. The tomorrow can be the next 30 years, or it could be the tomorrow the next day. We don't know what tomorrow is going to be, but on the way we will have more consensus, and it's not just diaspora of our own. It should be more engaging community, and that approach is needed. Yesterday and today, we have had multiple sessions, and the keynote session, we have had experts, we have had lots of discussions, even during break time. But I think I'm the last speaker of the last session. It's an honor to be the last speaker of the last session. So I've shared my thoughts as a researcher. So in terms of seeking for new possibilities, my discussion point actually can serve as a catalyst. You might think what I'm telling you is not realistic, but then you can give me your feedback on what I talked about. Maybe you can give me a feedback to Hansa Seidel Foundation or to me as a researcher. And also, we can talk about some of the projects we can work together. Thank you so much for listening. Great, thank you.
더욱더 감사의 말씀드리겠습니다.
So we don't have much time at the moment, so I will just give a brief abstract of what I have recollected. So in terms of the social civil society and the economy, the urban development models were all being researched and experienced. So I think that if we do want to pursue with projects in this area, then I think that they have provided a good foundation for our stepping stone. I think that Ms. Lee Hae-jung, she spoke about what is needed in order to overcome the current impasse and situation. Based on our experiences and looking over a wide area of the movement and where it's needed. And senior researcher Choi Hyuna from Hans Seidel also mentioned for development and for regional development and balance, we need to look into the reproduction of talent as well as how the government and the civil society must react to it. So we have about 15 minutes left, and over the course of the 15 minutes, I would like to turn over to the floor if you have any questions. We will combine the questions and ask the three panelists to answer as well as deliver their final comments. So once you make questions from the floor, please be concise and ask within a minute or so. Thank you very much. I would like to ask Ms. Lee Ye-jung. I think that it's also one of our friendly colleagues in this field, and I think that I've been also doing a lot of research on that. You also mentioned whether it was viable from what we had done in the past, whether it's accumulated and has made any difference, and I think that I agree with you because North Korea always talked about their own method of politics. And we always focused on the civil society and the actual residents and raising their livelihoods. And I think that the North Korean government also probably the priority for them was to feed their residents and to clothe them and to provide residences. And I think what North Korea had been doing before we had interacted with them was military first politics, whereas they turned around and they opened up to look into their residents. But at the moment, I think that it's very frustrating because they're not opening up and they're closing their doors on us. But if we think about history in the 1990s and 2000s, they were in a national disaster. So that's why they opened up to the external forces. But I don't think that it would be favorable because before they are in a situation of crisis or a disaster, we want them to open up in order to cooperate with us on a level footing. And there were areas where we could not approach, but I think that we need to approach on the aspect of cooperating with each other. Before, it was very limited because it was a poor country and they wanted to grow beyond being a poor country. And in order for them to do that, they actually have to get loans, they have to get aid, and humanitarian aid is not the answer for them. So every time they tried, Japan and the United States always vetoed or opposed their accession. So that's why North Korea never had the access. And relatively speaking, they would probably have thought that we were only giving them pennies from the civil society side. So it wasn't enough for them to turn around their situation. So I thought that we needed to stop the pollution of seeping into this area. I think that the insurrection and the previous government always thought about the aid, ODA in Cambodia and such, but I think that we need to stop the pollution of these thoughts and perceptions flowing over to other people. I think that it was more of a comment and also additional opinions from his side. I'll also turn over to the floor again.
Yeah. Please say it succinctly. I think youth these days, actually, cannot experience North Korea because there isn't much relation going on, and we won't be able to gain opportunities for the time being. And humanitarian aid economy targeting youth is what I do operate. For the youth 2030, we might be able to support the inter-Korean relations, and I think I'd like to know some of the first step we can take as youth in South Korea so that the relations. It's a very tough question. I'm not sure I was going to answer, but then please be ready with the answers. Maybe activist Choi actually can answer, or Ms. Iezang can answer later. Maybe we can have one more question from the audience. Yes. So I do wish for peace on the Korean Peninsula. I'd like to ask a question. We would not be having a consensus on Korean Peninsula, but then I think peace is something we need to build together, and given the fact that we are divided, if it had been an easy problem, we could have fixed it, but then the reason why we cannot solve it is because it's very tough to address, and I can really feel it myself. Regarding development cooperation, a lot of participants are there for the conference on the topic. Maybe there might be some voices saying development cooperation discourse would give time or further time for nuclear to be more nuclear. I'd like to understand your thoughts more.
So we had 3 questions and comments from the floor. So including the answers, if you have any comments to add in your closing comments, I will give 2 minutes per panelist. So let's move from reverse. So from Ms. Che, from Hans Seidel.
Thank you. This is my personal experience. Sustainable humanitarian aid-wise, regarding the things we can do right now, that was your question. Well, I think it's about the Orient. I don't know your major, but then the North Korean situation, maybe you can do some study on it. Because when I first studied it, my major is forestation management. But then actually I've been more interested in RED projects, like Indonesian case, Vietnam case, are the ones I studied a lot in the past. But at one point in time, I have worked for Hans Seidel Foundation, and compared to Germans, I didn't realize what was going on in North Korea. I need to understand North Korea, I thought, to do work on there. And I was a bit jealous because even compared to expats, I actually didn't know much more about North Korea. And our president, he has been to North Korea many times, but I haven't been there even once. So I thought maybe I need to do something. I got interest in it because my interest and major is reforestation. I have done research on it regarding North Korea. And maybe I thought maybe I need to write down some text because I actually got to know more about North Korea and their reality, writing down some thesis. So maybe I know you're involved in one of the fields, but there are different fields out there related to North Korea. But to do with your major, I think you might check out the relevant situation in North Korea. If it's to do with humanitarian aid, maybe you can study it further. So there is monthly magazine titled EM. Maybe I want to recommend that you write some column there as well to actually get to know your view in comparison with others. And regarding the inter-Korean cooperation, well, as I said earlier, North Korea shouldn't be just looked upon as nuclear state. Or, I mean, you mentioned Kaesong complex. Maybe just talking about how labor in North Korea is more practical and cheap. Maybe you should go beyond it. We should go beyond a single notion. Maybe we need to look at multiple pictures at the same time. So we don't just think about giving out food or rice. We have to think about the future together. I don't know how much time it will take. It can be the next day, tomorrow, but I don't know when it will happen. But regarding crisis or disasters, we have combined the disaster of climate crisis. So we need to look at the situation at a bigger angle. Thank you.
So I think the person who asked the question lastly, I think that thank you very much, because I think it's nice to know about the younger generation that's interested in development assistance and, of course, humanitarian aid. I don't think that there's a big enough market right now, so thank you very much for taking interest. So I personally think that, I guess, the older generation, we visited North Korea a couple of times. I think that this era is now over, because any exchange that happens in the future is something that should be led by you. We can share our experiences and we can support you in your efforts. However, it's on an extension to what I had been presenting, but a lot of the development aid and assistance to North Korea, I think we need to expand our horizons and think of it in line with the peace movements. And I really hope that you will voice your concerns, because I think that what we are concerned about is that the things that the younger generation think about, or how can we support them so that they can actually voice out their concerns and opinions. So maybe before you leave, if you can say hello, then I will deliver my business card. One more thing before I close. I think that this exchange and the pathway to exchange, I hope, will open up, but I don't think that it will be easy. It won't be fast either. I think we need to lose the thought that we need to sow the seeds and also harvest and reap the benefits as well. I think maybe we take it phase by phase. We can sow the seeds and someone else can reap the benefits and get the fruit. But what we do need to do from our society is also set. There's also things for the international community. Then there's also things for North Korea. Because there's many more actors now, I just wish I can play a role in that pie.
Thank you. Maybe in the similar context, I have done some history studying these days. There have been some major historic events. There seems to be lots of time, like decades, between major breakthroughs. So we have been split for the past 70 or 80 years. And maybe it can be even a very short time if you look at a very big picture. And one of the young people actually mentioned this question, and this Sunday, for the first time ever, I am doing this full course marathon in the AMZ. There have been a marathon in Pyongyang. And it was 2 months ago. I visited Dandu, and at nighttime, I actually did run on the Yalu River. I looked at Wihado, and the light there, the quality was the highest ever compared to my previous years, even visiting Shinjuku. So as young people do run near Yalu River, and also there is also the International Marathon of Paju. When it's held, I do believe that many people will participate in it. I think running is going to be one of the most impactful activities from the civic aspect. So these activities can be some of the examples for us to think about more creative projects with the North. Lastly, I know that the Oriental Economic Forum is the one where the government didn't participate. Maybe you're thinking of ways to participate. We're thinking of different sessions as well. So the current government is not very active in many areas. Maybe the civic side actually can engage more. Thank you.
고맙습니다. 이 마지막
So thank you very much for keeping all of your places until the very end.
일단 오늘 우리가 확인하는 첫 번째는 우리가
So what we have confirmed today is that for the development assistance and in terms of peacemaking activities and aid activities, I think that whatever we have done has paid off, to whatever extent. And I think that for the future, I think that we are still putting in our effort and trying to get through. However, the current situation at hand, it has a very big gap to what we wish to achieve. And so we all need to join forces hand in hand to overcome these different situations.
마음으로 함께 했던 것 같습니다.
So I think that we all had the same thought and feelings.
나와야 됨에도 불구하고
And lastly,
한 가지
I think that I would like to just touch upon one aspect that wasn't discussed. We are currently living in an era of complex risks and threats because of environment, climate, the political situations. I think that we need to be immediate in our responses and, of course, frequent in our responses.
관계 발전법에 의해서 우리가 사실은 북과 만나는 것을
So
했는데 이 정도 들어와서
it was very difficult to actually meet with North Koreans.
국내 환경 정비와 관련해서
So, in line with restructuring our current situation, I think that we all need to join hands and move forward in order to open a new era of the inter-Korea relations. And with that last comment, I'd like to thank everyone who has stayed with us until the end.
그리고 혹시 뭐 영어로 듣고 계신 분들
And if there are anyone who are listening in English, thank you very much for the interpreters.
큰 박수로 이 자리를
We will conclude with a big round of applause. Thank you very much.